If you watch the first video in this series, you'll know I've got this bike on long-term loan from BMW to ride and enjoy over the coming months. In that first video, I discussed the options on the bike, how the long-term loan works with BMW, and my first impressions of the bike after riding it a few times. I also asked for your thoughts about the bike, and if you had any specific questions you'd like me to answer on it. All up, there were 72 comments on the first video till now, and there were some really colourful thoughts, both positive and negative, about the bike, and also some very interesting questions that I thought would be cool to do a video on. Also, the bike has now done more than 1,000 kilometres or 600 miles, so it's just run in and I can open her up a bit. So that was a fun milestone I just reached. So in this video, I'll be sharing my experiences from the running in period and directly answering a lot of your questions about the R18B's early experiences I've had. Before we get into the specifics, the comments on that first video really showed that the R18B sparks strong, often opposing opinions. Aesthetically, the big boxer engine is highly divisive. It's simultaneously called the ugliest ever and also the prettiest ever, and a work of art. This strong polarity really underscores its unique statement-making design. Comfort and ergonomics are also a major point of contention. While some find it one of the most uncomfortable and heavy cruisers out there, others, including a 6'4" rider, firmly state it's not uncomfortable. This debate often ties into the prominent boxer engine cylinders and foot position, which some find intrusive while others have no issue. Overall, there's a broad consensus that the R18B caters to a very niche market. Viewers agree it's not for everyone, and probably not an only bike appealing to a specific enthusiast with the means. Despite the varied options, it's clear that the R18B undeniably has a magnetic pull, drawing in strong opinions and a dedicated audience. Beyond those general thoughts, one comment in particular really stood out to me. It's from an R18B owner who's had their bike for several years, and they provided an incredibly comprehensive breakdown of their experience. I thought it was a really well-balanced and concise opinion of the bike, and I thought I'd share it completely here with you now. They said, "I've owned my BMW R18 bagger for several years now. I'm 5'11" and pushing 65, and I can still handle the bike without an issue. Like any large cruiser, slow speed handling takes practice, but it's absolutely manageable. One key habit, never let the front wheel be cocked when coming to a stop, and always be cautious about parking on a slope." Have I dropped it? Yep, but I've dropped all four of my motorcycles over the years, each one for different reasons. With the R18, the culprit was the long kickstand throw. I didn't realise it had snapped back. Once this bike leans past a certain angle, it's going down. Fortunately, the OEM engine guards do their job, keeping the engine and saddlebags off the ground. Common misconceptions. Heat from the cylinders. Minimal. Honestly, my other bikes put out far more heat than the R18. Lean angle. It's typical for a big cruiser. No better, no worse. Forward controls. Not having them isn't an issue for me. I wear motorcycle boots and I use the heel toe shifter without any problem. Rear brake. Just a matter of adapting. Instead of stomping, I rotate my foot to the right to cover the pedal. Pros. Unique style. This bike stands out and I love that. Great handling for such a large machine. Loaded with tech. Love the adaptive cruise control. Some tech on the bike is also a con. Low seat height. I can flat foot easily. The boxer engine. Powerful, smooth, and full of character. Cons. Stock seat is terrible, and unfortunately, I haven't seen a third-party seat that matches the bike. Navigation system is subpar. Like many BMWs with this system, I refuse to bolt on a third-party GPS, so I live with it. Wind buffeting. The clockwork screen helps, but most aftermarket screens don't match the bike's look, in my opinion. My mods that make the bike even better. Heli bars. Better ergonomics without sacrificing style. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde exhaust. This sounds amazing and you can make it quiet if desired. Exhaust flap mod. Always open. more satisfying tone. I think he means on the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde exhaust. I'll actually show you that exhaust in a sec. Clockwork's windshield reduces buffeting without ruining the bike's aesthetic. Brain Tune improves engine response and overall performance. When I want to cruise, I take this bike. For long distance touring, I take something else. And for off-road, I still have a GS for that. I like that the R18 is polarizing. Even some diehard fans don't care for it, and that's part of the charm. It's bold, different, and it suits me just fine. That was a really long comment, and it must have taken ages to write, but thanks for sharing that. Just on the Jekyll and Hyde exhaust, I was at a classic bike show on the weekend, and I was shooting some photos of a BMW, and James turned up on his. We had a good chat. Turns out he's trading his R18 for an R1300 RT because he fancies a change. Anyway, James was showing me through his mods, and he had one of those Jekyll and Hyde exhausts on it, and here's how it sounds.
It won't sound the same. So that's on loud, but if I press that, normal, and now, you just press that again. Go again.
Now let's talk about my own experience getting this R18B through its running in period. The manual recommends that the standard running in practices are varying the throttle, avoiding long and constant RPMs, and importantly, not applying full load to the engine. It also recommends riding on twisty, hilly roads, which I thought was interesting. During run-in, the engine should not exceed 4,000 RPMs. I really enjoy the process of running in a new bike because it's not something you get to do all the time, and knowing you've followed the steps means that you've given the bike the best start to its life it could possibly have. I don't think I'm alone here, and I think a lot of riders like doing the best by their machines. At 1,000 kilometers or 600 miles, the manual states that the bike needs its first service and oil change. However, for press bikes like this one, they often have a certain amount of miles put on them before they go out on the pressed fleet, and their first oil change is already done before that. So the bikes go to the journalists and content creators with that done, so they don't have to go back and then back out again. And that's precisely what's being done to this bike, so no need for it to go in for a service. The real question here is, do I like the bike? And the direct answer is yes, a lot. I like it a lot more than the Roctane to ride because it's got the fairing at the front for the motorway and the weather protection. Looks wise, I think the Roctane looks gorgeous, but comes in second because of the fairing. Also, the Roctane doesn't have that big display or the dials up there. When I picked up the bike after it had its software update, I actually felt like I was picking up my own bike again, and I even selected a winding route home on the sat-nav, and it took me 2 hours instead of 1, and I didn't care. I can't actually remember the last time I did that. I actively look forward to riding the bike and will always choose it over the car or another bike if I can. Niggles. So with the bike now run in and having just put those first 1,000 Ks on the clock, I've got a few observations and minor niggles. First off, sat-nav and BMW's Make Life a Ride app. Yeah, I'm still not loving it. Without getting too deep into it, it's not easy to connect, and sometimes it doesn't until you ride off and then you stop again, which sometimes makes it connect properly. When I say connect, the app and the bike recognize each other, but sometimes they need to join each other, so it's like a two-step affair. If they're not joined, you can't see the map on the TFT display, and you can only see the turn-by-turn navigation, which I have no confidence with. Then sometimes once it's connected and joined, it will disconnect after a period of time. I've had the same experience with the RT I just had on loan and a few other BMW bikes too. It's just not as intuitive or seamless as it could be. I'm not going to go on about it anymore in this series, but this is just me getting it out here now. So if any owners out there have a good workaround that makes it easier to live with, please let me know in the comments. Then there's the suspension. It's definitely a touch on the firmer side of things, and if the roads are rough, you feel it. More on that in a bit. When you first get on the bike, it's really easy to kick the side panels. I was worried about this at first, but now I'm totally used to the size of the bike. If someone wants to sit on the bike and get a feel for it, make sure you tell them to kick their leg right over, otherwise they'll kick your side panniers and scratch them. All right, on to some FAQs. Question 1, what happened with the software update? If you watched the first video in the series, you'll know that the bike needed a software update because the rear daylight running lights kept flashing. So I had to take it back to BMW headquarters to be put on the computer and updated. Well, I've obviously got the bike back now, and yep, it just needed to be updated, and that was it. Fortunately, I got the R1300 RT in the meantime, so it wasn't all that bad. If you want to go and see the review of that bike, you can go and check it out on my other channel, which is called Motofilmer. Question 2. How is the engine vibration, especially when revving hard? Now that the bike's been run in, I've been making a point of selecting rock mode and getting up the bike a bit and revving it harder. My default riding state with this engine is to run it at around 2000 to 3000 RPM because it's just so lovely to ride at normal speed in that zone. When I'm revving a bit more, I can report that the engine does vibrate more, but it's not annoying. Having said that though, this is not the sort of bike that I'd like to be revving hard for extended periods of time. Question 3. Tell us about the suspension and ride quality. This wasn't a direct FAQ, but an owner recommended I touch on the suspension. I really do enjoy reading the manuals to the test bikes that we get on the channel, and I was interested to learn that this bike adjusts the preload automatically depending on the load. Quite a nice touch, considering I had the Roctane for a while last year, and I was adjusting the preload on that bike manually with a socket at the time. But onto the ride. Yeah, it's a touch on the firm side, like I said, and it's not one of its most redeeming features. The best way I can describe it is that it feels like the tyres are pumped up too much and the wheels are just feeling everything. The large bump compliance, though, is excellent, and I haven't bottomed the bike yet. If I see a massive bump coming up in the road, I stand up, but I would usually stand up on any bike. Obviously, you notice it more when the roads are bad because you feel things more. Yeah, I reckon it could be maybe a touch softer. Also, a lot of that stiffness seems to make its way into the fairing at the front of the bike. So if it's rough ground, you see the fairing vibrating a bit up the front there. Maybe someone on here has had their suspension upgraded somehow. If you have, let us know in the comments. Question 4, how does the bike's weight impact the handling? Yep, the bike's heavy, and you do need to have a certain amount of might to move it around. The bike weighs just under 400 kgs wet, and it actually doesn't bother me. In fact, I quite enjoy manhandling it around. On the road, because the engine is a boxer, it means that the weight is down really low, and it can be moved around easily. I have ridden the bike in the rain, and the story was very different though. Because the roads were wet, I found myself taking things very easily around corners, and I was very conscious of the weight of the bike, trying to push those wheels out. Question 5. How does the R18B's geometry actually differ from the other R18 models? This is a really good question, and one you don't always hear discussed. Yes, underneath it all, while they share that big boxer engine and have a similar frame design, BMW has actually tweaked the geometry quite a bit between the models, especially for the R18B here. So compared to the standard R18 or the Classic, for example, the R18B and the Transcontinental has a noticeably steeper rake angle. We're talking around 27.3 degrees here, compared to the standard R18's 32.7 degrees. What that essentially means for us riders is that the front wheel is tucked in a bit more, making the bike feel more agile and responsive, particularly when you're turning into corners. On top of that, the R18B also gets a bit more rear suspension travel, 120 millimeters or 4.7 inches, which is more than the base cruiser models, 90 millimeters or 3.5 inches. Then you've got the Roctane, which takes its own path with a prominent 21-inch front wheel and its own unique rake of 34.7 degrees, giving it that distinct custom look and feel. So yeah, they really do dial in each model to ride a little differently, despite all the bikes being from the same family. Question 6, how does a bike feel to ride long distances? Well, in my opinion, it's a lovely place to be for 1 or 2 hours and then only a break. But this is the same for most bikes, actually all of them. This bike's got the option 719 bench seat on it, but it looks to me to be the same shape as the standard seat with just a different stitch and style. Some people say that the seat's uncomfortable. As I've said, for me, seat's good. If you want to know exactly what options this bike's got in it, it's almost got them all, check out the first video in this series. Question 7. Does the riding position with feet behind the cylinders feel weird? Regarding the forward controls versus mid controls, I don't think I have a favourite way to sit on a cruiser. If anything, the R18 feels a bit more active to ride and the forward controls feel a bit more relaxed. This is absolutely personal preference, and although I like room to move around on big bikes because I'm a bit taller than average, I don't feel squashed on this one when I ride it. Sometimes my size 12 boots touch the cylinders when I'm changing gears and using the rear brake, but it's not annoying. Mainly I'm concerned about wearing the paint off them over time. Yeah, there's no heat from the cylinders though, even though the bike's air and oil cooled. Question 8, how is the bike riding 2-up for long distances? My wife has been on the back of the bike and I was surprised when she said it was comfortable. I was expecting the opposite, considering the R1300 RT we just had on loan for a couple of weeks was the most comfortable bike she's ever sat on, her words there. Having said that, I wouldn't like to take her on this for a long ride other than just A to B, because she'd feel quite exposed on the back there and she would only have one position to sit in, and the seat does actually look pretty small. Pillion strap was okay, and I noticed that she had one hand on it while we were riding along and the other was on my waist. Just on that strap, she did say when she was riding along, she felt like she was riding a horse. Her pillion rating for this bike was 7 or 8. It was actually higher than I thought it would be. Question 9, how much does the bike cost to service? Someone asked about servicing in the comments and I called the local dealer. They told me that the servicing on all BMW motorcycles is every 6,000 miles or once a year. What's included in an initial service is the engine and gearbox oil change, general check over, fluid checks and all the standard sort of servicing checks they do. Cost for that one was £250. Then cost for a major service is £450, which includes all the things I just mentioned, plus a few other things like shaft, bevel, oil change and air filter change. This is approximate costs, and he didn't go into a massive amount of detail on the phone, although he did say that every service centre will have different costs. Not exact numbers, but gives you an idea. I think this is a great type of video to produce because instead of me just waffling on about things that I think are interesting, it answers specific questions that people want to know about this bike. If you have any other questions or observations or anything else, leave it in the comments below, and if I think they're relevant, I'll address them. That's it. Thanks for watching.